So I'm grateful to be here with you all. Just getting my little modern props set up here. All right. So for fun, I thought I'd get into what could be perceived as a controversial topic, but it's really not a controversial topic. So when I was thinking about what I'd label it, I decided I would talk about cancel culture. So that could mean different things to all of us, and we all define it slightly differently, which is really interesting. So cancel culture, who cancels who? Who cancels who? Yogic Tools to Awaken Ever-Present Oneness. So right out of the gates, I want to get this out of the way that many of you might want to frame this as a cultural left versus right, or a Democrat versus Republican, socialism versus capitalism. This is actually not a political talk. This talk is about going deeper into ourselves while we're dealing with that realm of appearances, temporary, contemporary topics, which are all impermanent. So I want to invite us all to think about how cancel culture impacts us on personal spiritual levels and how we can play in it, but simultaneously go beyond it. So a few years back, early COVID, I don't remember if it was 2020 or 2021, but we wanted to go somewhere for Christmas. And we'd been to many of like the typical places you would think we would go to, me and my wife Miriam and our daughter Anjali. And everybody kept getting very political with all of my more left-leaning friends. I'm like, I just want to go to church. It's just gonna like talk about Jesus tonight. So for some reason, I decided to go to the Catholic Church in Ypsilanti. And little did I know, but they're like a hotbed of conservative politics. And within 30 seconds of the priest, is that what you call it? Within the priest's talk, he was talking about the woke people don't understand the spirit of Christmas. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I chose the wrong place if I wanted to. But then he continued on to actually have a really beautiful, inspirational topic, but he had to like, get that political charge at the beginning. So then this last Wednesday, we had the big ice storm. And it was funny because like, I'm gonna talk about cancellation and everybody was canceling, right? The schools were canceled. I heard Washtenaw Community College canceled. And I actually went back to that Catholic church. I'm in an interfaith minister training right now and I need to get in lots of visitations. And so I wanted to participate in Lent. And I walk, the ice is coming out and there's all the slush all over the ground. And I go up to the door and it's canceled due to inclement weather. I was like, wow. I was like, the Catholics are canceling on Lent. And I was like, cancel culture is just out of control. I was just totally out of control. So, but it happened that the little bit more liberal Catholics, which are in South Ypsi, far South Ypsi, they were open. So I went and I did the Lenten activities with them. So all joking aside, the topic of who cancels who, it can be inherently problematic for many reasons. So as I was saying before, many of us will instantly go to left versus right, and we're gonna fall into that bipartisan interpretation. Some of us will get stuck there, and we won't be able to get out. Now, maybe nobody here, maybe we're all evolved enough, not to judge evolved or non-evolved, but will we be able to get past that initial shock? My ideas, me. So if any of you have already hit that, I'd ask you to invite you to let that go. Because this life, and now get ready, here's all the trigger words. It's not about pro-life versus pro-choice. It's not about don't say gay versus parental rights in education. It's not about climate deniers versus climate activists. I personally find it pretty interesting that prominent academics and biologists are being canceled left and right in the name of science. The policing of language has become very socially acceptable and mainstream, and it goes on and on and on. Now all these things are trigger warnings, and so now how can we feel that trigger and then kind of step out of it simultaneously? So none of these topics is not really what I'm talking about, but yet it is what I'm talking about. So we need to see the issue, but then step further back inward, we could say, or we could maybe say step further out, far out. So all these are contemporary social narratives. So it can be hard for us to look at our internal reactions because we'll often get stuck on the external reactions. And often we get stuck in, will my team win? right? So I feel like I've got a little bit of a trick as a speaker this morning, because I want my words to call you to something that's beyond the dualities, but yet I'm bringing up the dualities. And the question is can we go beyond the canceller and the canceled, or we get stuck in the realm of calling each other out? So there's a thing often in the yoga tradition that they say that the enlightened person, which I am not, will point to the moon, and then all of the students look at the teacher's finger instead of looking at the moon. So it's totally natural for all of us to go towards conflict, because there's a lot of fight and flight involved in survival. And in the modern world, we've got sales and marketing. You know, you get on your email, and if you're like me and you use Yahoo Mail, there's like a load of things that are going to drag you into fight or flight as soon as you open the page. So we're walking around like there's constantly a tiger chasing us, and we're really just trying to check our email. So I'm not asking anybody here to let go of any particular political worldview. Most of you probably have a specific worldview, but there might be some variation here. And I am personally really enjoy talking with people who completely disagree and people who have different views than me. I want to hear it all, and I want to truly and deeply understand you. So I found it interesting this morning, the words in the "'Tis a gift to be simple." I love that song. "'Tis a gift to be knowing, 'tis a gift to be kind, 'tis a gift to wait and hear another's mind. And when we speak our feelings, it may come out true. 'Tis a gift for me and a gift for you." I felt like, okay, so I don't need to do my talk. So fear is a natural part of life, and sometimes it's hard for us to stop and listen on all levels, interpersonal, social, political, religious, all those things. So the thing is we need to relating from our fear, we get into more conflict and tension. When we can relate to our fear from awareness and consciousness, then the fear becomes more neutralized. The fear is probably not going to go away, but our internal reaction to it is what we can work with. Can we react from understanding and compassion and not get stuck in what we think everyone else should do to be the model citizen? So that's the big trap these days. If everybody else would do this, then everything would be okay. I call it phony compassion. So can we be actual compassion, which isn't about policing others, but about taking responsibility for our own feelings and then really showing up as a deep listener? So somebody put this on Facebook, one of my Hare Krishna friends, so this Gauranga Das from their community. "Arguments are bound to happen in relationship, so you can't avoid conflicts completely. But when you choose to understand the person and listen to their point of view, you show how much you care about the relationship more than your ego." Right? Often we're so busy to get our point out that we value our idea and our point more than we value the relationship or making space for the other. When we care more about our ideas than we do other people, it makes it very hard to connect when we have differences of worldview. And we're going to have differences of worldview with everybody. So do we care more about our ideas and mental constructs than we do about our connection with others? Realistically, at some point, all of us fall into this trap, right? I know I have, and I'd be willing to put on my genie hat and predict that each one of you has let social or political ideologies cause strain and stress in a relationship at some point in your life. And if not, maybe in the last 24 hours, or maybe just in your thoughts, it doesn't even necessarily come all the way out. So why is it so hard for us to set aside our preferred political and social ideologies and reach out to understand, compromise, and build bridges? So A Course in Miracles touches on this topic in an interesting way. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. Judgment is the process on which perception but not knowledge rest. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. It's this rather profound statement. Judgment is symbolic. All of these things, all of these, like when we were doing the chant, Sitaram, it's a symbolic, it's this guy and this king and this queen. It's symbolic of something deeper. And it's all that judgment. What's beyond that is the union of Sita and Ram. When the Bible says, back to the Course in Miracles, when the Bible says, judge not that ye be not judged, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. So the Course is touching on knowing. It's referring to knowing, which we could call waking up to the present moment, waking up to our infinite nature, versus being caught in the judgment and comparison mind. So how do we get free from the judging mind and go to that state of direct knowing? How do we step into listening deeply and purely in the present moment? Sustained listening, right? Not just a little quick listening. So the yoga system gives us endless tools to transcend our ego's reactions. Now, I'm into the full yoga system, so that's where I'm going, but there's lots of means and methods. Bhakti, karma, jnana yoga can all help us go from reacting to fear and tension to responding with awareness to fear and attention. So instead of reacting to fear, we go back and we act from awareness. And that's the key. We need to be reacting to fear and tension from a deeper place inside of ourselves. Because as I said earlier, fear is normal and natural. So I'm going to briefly go over Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga, just to kind of review for those who are familiar and to introduce for those who aren't familiar. So Karma Yoga can be very simply summed up by a few sayings. So a common one is let go of the fruit of our actions. So take action, but don't be attached to the outcome. A Christian saying is be in the world, but not of it. And Swami Satchitananda said, do your best and leave the rest. So Bhakti Yoga, in short, is the path of love. So the reading today was from a Bhakti Yoga tradition. We were talking about singing and dancing as the means to transcend the ego. In Bhakti, we use prayer, chanting, rituals, and the attitude of devotional surrender to the Supreme Consciousness or whatever sort of personal form of God you love. It could be the goddess, it could be Jesus, etc. So we use that relationship to that higher power to go beyond our ego conflicts of me versus you. Javed Nubaksha, whose last name I'm sure I didn't get right, who's a contemporary Sufi from Iran, has a really nice quote, which sums up Bhakti Yoga and how it fruits into Jnana Yoga. So we'll touch on Jnana Yoga in a second. Through love, I have reached a place where no trace of love remains, where I, and we in the painting of existence have all been forgotten and left behind. As long as you are you, you will be miserable and impoverished. So, well, I happen to agree, but when we cling to our ideologies and start canceling each other with a tremendous amount of fervor, it will always cause us to feel impoverished and miserable after the storm of cancellation is done. So this quote, he talks about using love where he's gone beyond love, where there's no longer me or you, we or I. So then he's talking about this sort of higher reality of identity. So Jnana Yoga directly addresses the question of what is the self? What is the infinite self? Jnana Yoga uses questions to contemplate deeply on who am I really? So we ask ourselves questions like, what is the sense of I? Or who am I? Who or what is this I sense that is angry at others? So if I'm having a feeling, I can say, who's really having this feeling? And then inquire deeply into that. And in regards to this topic is, why do I want to cancel you? Or who is canceled by canceling who? It's a little bit of a weird one, but who is really canceled? Like if I try to cancel you on social media, most likely, right? Like who's really going to end up canceled at the end of the day? I want to suggest that we both end up being canceled eventually. So we'll come back to these ideas of inquiry, but I just want to touch on what we think of usually as yoga, which is mind-body practices. And the mind-body practices are amazing for unwinding physical tension that's lodged in our body, for getting us into deeper states of clarity. But the power of the yoga really lights up when we start to bring in these yogic teachings of who am I, how can I have devotion, and how can I let go of the fruits of my action, bhakti, karma, and jnana yoga. So all the different branches of yoga, if we practice them skillfully, they can help us get out of this me versus you or you're canceled kind of mindset. Now, if we're not doing the yoga system well, we might still be doing the same thing. We got to use the tool well, right? So in my interfaith minister training that I'm doing right now, we're reading this really good book called How Can I Help by Ram Dass. Has anyone here read that? So I think every American needs to read it right now at this particular crossroads that we're at. And I wanted to share a few quotes with you guys. So the basic concept of the book is how can we truly help people? So one of the things he talks about is helper's prison. You know, like we think we're helping, but it's really driven by ego that we're helping. But just kind of highlighting the book a little bit. But here's some actual quotes. We all need the clarity and inspiration we can get in order to not violate in our behavior the very principles and ideals we're fighting for. In anger, we may lose sight of love. In fear, we may sacrifice trust and courage. In guilt, we may deny self-worth and obstruct inspiration. Do we really want to lose access to all of these? We can turn anger at injustice into cool, steady resolve. If we are not rooted in compassion, how will our acts contribute to a compassionate world? If we cannot move beyond inner discord, how can we find a way to social harmony? If we ourselves cannot know peace and be peaceful, how will our acts disarm hatred and violence? There is no way to peace, said A.J. Musti. Peace is the way. So thank you, Ram Dass. Amen. So listening is an interesting thing. We can act like we listen for a few seconds and then we get our point in, or we listen a little bit to kind of subdue the person, and then a month later we get them, stab them, something like that. So Wu Wei, who is a philosopher, said, we are unhappy because 99.9% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. And Reverend John Mundy, who's been here speaking before, I took some of these quotes from one of his books, but God, whose love is everywhere, can't come to visit unless you're not there. So for our transformation to be profound, we must go beyond what I'm calling listening quickies, which is, quick, unsatisfying. We want a really deep, long listening, it's a quick superficial moment of hearing. It really won't do. We have to listen so deeply and continuously that we create an impact of deep loving and understanding for other people in whose worldviews sometimes challenge us. Our listening has to be so profound, it makes the other feel so heard that they want to listen back, right? If we listen really tremendously, other people will open up. And we might find that we actually have things in common. So our listening can't really be followed up by self-defense or manipulation or trying to dominate others with our desire to have the worldview victory. We need to have loving curiosity so deep that we truly understand the other. Because true listening on all levels of our being can really bring radical transformation. So Jiajing Huayong, who is the founder of Sudden Enlightenment Buddhism, which is a branch of Chinese Buddhism, said, he who is in the habit of looking down upon others has not gotten rid of the erroneous idea of itself. So, Within Jnana Yoga, there's a lot of exploration of how erroneous the sense of self actually is, that we think is this lasting thing. It's actually full of impermanence. We're impermanence walking around, but we think we're some sort of permanence. So this erroneous idea of self is quite an illusion that we walk around under. So this idea of self and no self are really kind of the same thing, because our self is connected. It's an interconnected web of life. So when we talk about not existing, it's actually talking about we are each other. We are connected to everything and connected to nature. So in closing, I want us to just look at these Jnana Yoga self-inquiries. So who cancels who? If we look closely, we'll see that when we cancel someone else, we are actually canceling our connection to wholeness. We're canceling our humanity. And from the bird's eye view, canceling others is truly canceling an opportunity to learn and grow more deeply into genuine compassion and understanding. When we cancel others, we think we're getting a victory for ourselves, but we're actually canceling connection, canceling deeper learning, we're creating division, and we unconsciously set up a cause and effect cycle where the canceled will eventually attempt to cancel us back. That's what I kept saying at last family Thanksgiving. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's just a natural byproduct of what happened 6 months ago within the social dialogue. It's like, well, they canceled them, and now they're trying to stop this, and they're removing these books, and now these people are removing these books. It's just a tit for tat, back and forth. So this is the cycle we're in today in our culture. We're trying to stop others instead of really creating a dialogue of peace and understanding. So it's karma. Everything that goes around comes around. And it's a dangerous war of the egos. So what can we do? We need to look deeply at our sense of self, our sense of I, our attachment to stories, our attachment to ideologies, and our desired sense of supremacy over others, that my idea is better than yours. And we need to let that go and show up as a listener and a bridge builder. We need to throw all of that I-ness into the divine fire. We need to set aside the need to be right, and we need to listen deeply. We can let this all roast, all of these, through the practices of yoga, through the self-inquiry, through the chanting. We can let it all burn up. And that would be the goal, to bring a more peaceful and a harmonious future in our personal lives and on a social level. So I was going to invite us to do a little chant, but we're way over time. We can explore how to use mantra to drop into that silence so that it can be walking in that peace, but we'll cancel that for today. Thank you, everybody. Namaste.